how do we show up in a relationship in that way to make them feel needed?
By giving them a role. By giving them a role or a way to show up in their lives, and then to show up in our lives in a way that says, this is how you need me, this is how I need you, this is how you show up in this way, and this is how you help me or fulfill this need. This is how you fulfill your need and how you fulfill my needs. You have to give a man a role. And actually, Miss Taking, we talked about this the other day when everyone kind of got off, and we were talking about how, I had to learn how to, like, when I'm picking up a box and my significant other wants to take the box down, I'm like, no, I got it. I have to give him that role to feel needed, even if it's very small and minute. If he wants to pick up a 2-pound box, and because he doesn't want me to pick it up, allow him to do so, And so when you give a man a role in that space, it allows him to actually fully express himself in that masculine energy. And then he gives you what you need: protection, trust, stability, all of these things.
Let me just tell you, if a man comes into my house, he's got a lot of roles. And he's gonna know. Thank you, baby. Oh, you're so strong. That's just me.
I have a hard time. With what Lauren said, I have a hard time because it was a guy, and basically he was trying to take the trash out. I'm like, no, you're the guest, relax, So it's just like I have to catch myself and let him do that. I don't know why. I'm just telling a man.
Why do you want to take the trash out?
I don't know. I'm just so used to.
It's like, thank you, baby.
We're creatures of habit.
I was gonna say, to wrap it around back to T-Bomb's question, I think from him going to a state to where that's what he wanted, and then he realized that's no longer what he wanted, I would just identify it with change. And at the end of the day, change is inevitable, and if we're not changing, we're dead. And so I would expect people to grow and to evolve. And, I think it's just reflective that in his evolution, he's realized that that kind of woman no longer services him. And so, we all grow. And I think that kind of touches basis with the concept that sometimes we grow together, sometimes we grow apart, and that's okay too. And so, I think it's okay that he wanted something different, and it's okay for him to honor his feelings. And if that woman or that person no longer resonates with the individual that or the energy that you've stepped into, I think that's okay as well. We've been really conditioned to stick things out and to, do things beyond our capacity of what makes us feel good. And, like whether it's waking up and going to a job every day that doesn't make us happy, whether, staying in a marriage that doesn't make us happy. At the end of the day, I think putting ourselves first is what's the most important. I say it all the time, and, I stand by it. Putting yourself first is what is most important. And if his values changed and she's not evolving with him and she's staying the same, I think it's more reflective on her, and that's okay. That's her choice. But I think it's okay that he wanted something different for himself.
But I mean, he's a grown ass man. So why are you actually even saying, I want a woman with no career? Like,
because some people don't want a woman with a career. I mean,
I get it.
It's just, and there you have it again, just like what I said before. That's why it's important for us to choose mates who are on our same path, especially at this age. I mean, come on. So that this won't happen. And like Della just said, I think that with time, people progress and their minds change, and that's fine. But I want to also say, as the loyal creature that I am, I personally don't think you should just jump ship because of that. I think that you should try to work it out, because I think that our divorce rate is far too high for just selfish reasons. Now, if it's something and you're waking up miserable every day and it's a mental thing, mental issue is causing you distress, leave it, because your health is more important than the relationship. However, most of the time it's not to that extent. You made a vow with a person, and I think that it'd be great to stick it out if you can. If it's not to the point it's detrimental to your health, then you should try to stick it out, because that's your word. When you went into that relationship with that person, that's a part of that covenant, is it not?
I think that, again, kind of touching on what Shantae was saying and speaking to what Della was saying, I think your putting yourself first is very important. And what I mean putting yourself first is when in terms of your emotional, your mental, your spiritual, your physical health and well-being. That should absolutely come first from both partners, right? But I think what we have gotten, we went from one extreme, I think, to the other. Whereas back in the day, no matter how you felt or how you showed up in the relationship as a female in terms of dealing with a man, like, well, back in the day where they can completely have a whole nother family that lived down the street, right? And the woman stayed because she had no one option, because a lot of times that financial security was there, so he was able to do what he wanted, and without much consequences, because the wife really had no choice but to stay there. Where else is she going to go? And then I think from being in an environment like that, where you feel like you don't have any say so, you don't have many options. So you go from that extreme to now is like, okay, I have the option. I can choose to get out of this marriage if I, don't feel that is serving my needs any longer, right? So then you have the I think correction or, adjustment of, what, if I'm not happy, I'm out. If if he's not serving my needs or she's not serving my needs, guess what? I'm out. If I change and she's no longer, meeting my needs or vice versa, I'm out. And I think that's the problem, that I think as we get into further along in the generations that come, it is so much about the I. And while that's important, sometimes when you're in a relationship, that becomes less important, because now you should show up in the world as a we, right? As an us. And when you are so focused on the fact that your needs are not being met, because it's easy to get caught up in that, because there's not going to be one person that's going to be able to meet your every single need. Right. And so when we begin to focus on, he's not meeting my need in this area, she's not meeting my need in this area, that we come so overly focused on those things that when you sit down and look at it, a lot of times they're meeting your needs in so many other areas. But we're conditioned that when we feel uncomfortable, we focus on the discomfort. Right. And so now that discomfort seems to outweigh everything else. And it's like, well, I'm not happy, so I'm a divorce. It's about my mental well-being, my happiness. Happiness is a fleeting feeling, just like anything else, because you have people who are by themselves and they're unhappy, right? And think that when they get a mate, that mate is going to make them happy. And then they come in a relationship and realize the mate isn't going to make them happy either, right? It's about that self-work that they're going to have to do on their own to find their own happiness. And then you show up in a relationship already happy, and then this person can add to it. But I do think that when you take your vows, it is for better or worse. And people are going to change. And a lot of times you're not going to know. You can start one way and say, oh, we have the same grounding. We have the same, basic belief system, the same values. But then as you operate and move on in life, life happens. And so because life happens, your values may change, your desires in terms of what you want now versus then change. And you have to have a partner that is willing to adapt and grow along with those changes. So even though, like, bringing it back to what T-Bomb was saying, is that even though the husband is saying, now I don't want a wife that works home, she sits around and she doesn't do anything. I do think that there's some layers that need to be unpeeled, like what Lauren is saying, what in his life has changed now that wants, that no longer wants what he used to have, right? And for her, then the question becomes, okay, do I still want to stay in this marriage? And if so, if this is what he wants, right, what can I do to a degree to kind of accommodate some of that? So it may look like what Shantae was saying. Maybe let me go volunteer at the PTA to give myself something that is mine, that shows that growth. And also because that's only going to help her as well, right? Doing things outside of the home. It's hard to just stay in the house and really grow and develop if you're not intentional about it, right? And in order to do that, you're going to have to leave the confines of your home in order to develop, right? So if she's willing to do that work, that's going to redefine her as a new woman. She's going to find a different self-worth and value in her own, which is then potentially make her even more attractive to him again, because now she's no longer the same woman that she was before. So when you're in a marriage, it is going to be a lot of ebb and flows and changing, where you're taking on the 80% at one point, and then sometimes the other person's going to have to take on 80%, but you have to be open to the change and be willing, be open to the change and be willing to come to the table with each other and communicate like, I think we need to shift because I no longer feel this way.